In another video in the aesthetic renaissance, we talk about Amanzi Amnyama. Now, ayini Amanzi Amnyama? Literally, this translates to black water. So, we're going to be looking at just a brief analysis of what Amanzi Amnyama are and what are some of the symptoms and the signs that they are currently present in your life. So let's begin. The spiritual stagnation and the social, cultural, environmental dualities of Amanzi Amnyama. The term Amanzi Amnyama, a Nguni phrase translating literally to black water, presents one of the most complex dualities in Southern African socio-political and ecological landscape. On one hand, it is deeply rooted in metaphysical concepts within Zulu and Xhosa traditional belief systems, signifying a state of profound spiritual darkness, stagnation, or a self-inflicted curse that prevents individuals and families from achieving their potential. On the other hand, in the post-industrial reality of South Africa's Gauteng and Mpumalanga provinces, the term has become a literal descriptor for the toxic, blackened, and acidified water resulting from a century of extractive mining activities known scientifically as acid mine drainage or AMD. The metaphysical construct of Amanzi Amnyama in Nguni ontologies. In traditional spiritual hierarchy, Amanzi Amnyama is classified not as a random stroke of bad luck, but as a specific and often self-induced condition characterized by darkening an individual's path. Unlike external witchcraft, uktwala or ugloya, which is frequently perceived as an attack from a malicious outsider, Amanzi Amnyama is fundamentally understood as a self-inflicted family curse. It arises from a breach in harmonious relationships between the living and their ancestors, or more specifically, from betrayals within the nuclear or extended family unit. The mechanisms of spiritual churning. The etiology of this spiritual ailment is often traced to the ritual act of ukuphehla amanzi amnyama, which involves the churning of dark herbs and medicines in a clay pot. This symbolic act is intended to create bad vibes and a series of persistent misfortune. When a family member, often a sibling or a close relative, harbors extreme jealousy or a desire to elevate their own success at the expense of others, they may resort to this churning to close the spiritual paths of their kin. This results in a state where victims remain in stagnation, unable to find employment or maintain wealth, a condition known as isidina, unpopularity or spiritual repulsion. The spiritual significance of water in this context cannot be overstated. Water is viewed as a medium of communication with the ancestral realm, or abantu abadala. When this water is blackened through ritual malpractice, it signifies that the ancestors have turned their backs on the individual, leaving them in a state of ubumnyama, or a state of darkness and desolation. A marginal state existing between life and death, This condition is believed to permeate the entire bloodline, causing the clan to suffer painful, unnatural deaths or persistent economic failure. The diagnostic symbolism. The identification of Amanzi Amnyama typically occurs through a combination of life event analysis and the interpretation of symbolic dreams. Traditional healers, izinyanga or izangoma, are trained to detect these interpersonal and spiritual relationship problems through the arts of divination, of throwing bones and other means of divining. Dreams serve as a primary conduit for diagnostic information. In Zulu dream interpretation, the color and state of water are highly significant, while clear water represents good faith or a good path. Murky or hazy water suggests a need for spiritual clearing. However, the vision of black or muddy water is a definitive indicator of the self inflicted curse. Practitioners note that seeing dirty water flowing through a family residence in a dream specifically indicates that the curse has been brought into the domestic sphere by a resident, affecting the entire lineage. Ritualistic remediation, the praxis of ukugeza. The process of resolving amanzi amnyama is known as ukugeza or cleansing, or ukuqula amanzi amnyama, changing the black water. This is a profound and critical treatment process that requires the use of symbolic medicines to discard the darkness from the individual system and restore the ancestral light. The ritual often begins with a 7-day ritual cleanse. The patient is instructed to collect living water, ideally from a sea, a spring, or a waterfall, and add specific herbs and remedies together with coarse salt to their bath water. During this period, the individual must perform upasha, ancestral communication, not asking if they are cursed, but demanding that the ancestors shed light on the blockages, and reveal the way forward. For deep-rooted family issues, a larger ritual in a mountain setting may be required, involving the slaughter of a goat to appease the ancestors and signify a collective return to purity. Of course, this is depending on the individual or the family's specific um, belief system. The conflict of faith and toxicity. The profound intersection between these two worlds exists in the use of sacred water bodies for religious rituals. Worshippers in African independent churches and traditional healers rely on dams, rivers for baptisms and cleansing rituals. In Vuurhof, Soweto, a local dam is used for healing waters despite warnings from scientists about contamination from nearby open mine waste. Worshippers argue that their religious practices, which have been observed for hundreds of years, should not end because of irresponsible industrial pollution. This creates a tragic paradox. Individuals seeking to cleanse themselves of the spiritual blackwater misfortune are unintentionally or intentionally exposing themselves to literally black water of industrial waste and toxicity. The very act of seeking spiritual light or progression through water can lead to physical illness and further economic marginalization. The cultural narrative and literary reflections. The concept of Amanzi has permeated South African literature and music, serving as a powerful metaphor for the struggles of the marginalized. The Zulu novel Amanzi Amnyama by Muzomuhle Mngoma discusses these themes, though the specific plot remains a subject of oral and televised discussion. The theme of stagnation and the difficulty of escaping poverty is also central to Mgadi's theme, where a domestic worker punts on horses for 17 years without success, symbolizing the blocked path that is characteristic of Amanzi Amnyama. In music, the imagery of of black water is used by groups such as Izingani Zamakhosi to discuss spiritual warfare and the presence of evil. These artistic expressions reinforce the cultural understanding of black water as a force that actively works against human progress and social cohesion. Theological debates. The practice of consulting traditional healers for ukugeza or cleansing remains a point of contention within South African society, particularly among Christian groups. Some theological perspectives argue that consulting mediums and necromancers is an abomination that brings God's judgment. This view suggests that the life's troubles or sicknesses people try to cure through traditional means actually brings more spiritual darkness upon them without proper knowledge and education. This religious friction adds another layer to the stagnation, as families are often torn between traditional cleansing rituals and modern Christian beliefs, leading to a breakdown in the family harmony that is required to prevent Amanzi Amnyama in the first place. In conclusion, the interconnected path forward. Amanzi Amnyama, whether viewed through a spiritual or scientific lens, is a condition of sterility and blockage. The metaphorical churning of spirits in a ritual pot and the literal churning of water in abandoned mine shafts both result in a darkening of life's most essential resource. To address this, South Africa must move beyond treating the symptoms, be it through the individual rituals or temporary water filtration, and address the root causes. Family betrayal and social fragmentation on the spiritual side, and unregulated extraction and historical neglect on the environmental side. The convergence of these two worlds in places like the Fluerhof and the Carolina serves as a stark warning. The next drought will likely intensify the AMD problem, turning more river systems into black water and further threatening the communities that rely on them for both physical and spiritual survival. Only through a transdisciplinary approach that respects cultural beliefs while enforcing environmental accountability can the nation hope to change the black water and restore the path to progression for its people. The blackening of the water is not merely a technical error or a personal misfortune. It is a profound indicator of a society at odds with its own history and environment. Resolving it will require a collective ugeza or cleansing of both the land, individuals, and the spirit. And that will bring an end in today's episode. If you like today's episode, please do like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, goodbye.